Hi, this is Meta Spencer, and today is Sunday, April the 27th, 2025. And it's the last Sunday in the month, and of course, that means that we have our monthly global town hall. And I've already got one person I let in the door early. Hi, Marilyn. So I'm going to open the door now, and we'll have I don't think there's anybody else waiting, but somebody else will come along in a minute. So bring me up to date on how's everything in California, dear.
Oh, well, okay, I guess, not thrilled with the political situation, but I guess California is the place to be right now.
Yeah, right.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
you've got a gutsy governor. Uh, it looks like.
True.
Anyway.
Yeah, but we'll see. It's not good. We're doing, all of the United States, we're doing a lot of protests, and I'm participating in all those. We have another one coming up on Thursday.
Good. What do you do in the streets?
Yes, right. And carry signs or whatever. And there's been a lot of people who are participating, which is good.
In which town?
Well, they're all over. Where I'm doing it, it's been, depending on where I am, either Santa Cruz or in Redwood City. San Francisco did one a few weeks ago, which was really interesting, and it was on Ocean Beach. And what they did is they formed a word. I guess I don't know how many people were there. It made the media, and they formed. I think it was impeach. The words impeach Trump or something like that
Oh,
on the beach. So that was kind of cool.
I did have an idea of something that I wanted to do,
Mhm.
and it didn't work. Basically, I could say by now pretty conclusively that my idea flopped. And that was that I thought it's definitely time to start organizing resistance movements.
Mhm.
People should be planning what to do when when the black vans come for them, and how to protect people of each persecuted minority. That is, whether it's the teachers or the health workers or
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
all kinds of the park rangers or the
Mhm.
coral reef researchers or whatever. And they're all feeling it. And I imagine that most of them have begun game plans for how to fight back or how to protect their own members. But um, I don't know whether they want that known. It may be that they're quiet about it. But at any rate, I thought I would get 10, 20 people together and talk about strategies, what to do, maybe from an international perspective, because this is not just Trump, but Trump's activities have an impact on other countries. I mean, Greenland and Canada.
I think that is a fabulous idea.
Well, it should be, but nobody's able to. I call these meetings and there's no interest, or nobody, maybe they're all too busy. I don't know, but nobody's come.
Well, but I haven't seen that come. I mean, because I know you plan meetings, but I haven't seen that as a topic.
No, I didn't invite everybody.
Oh,
I only wanted because I couldn't. I mean, to talk strategy, you can't have 1,000 people. You can only have maybe 10 people in any one Zoom meeting that really have a chance to discuss. So I set up 4 different times, moments, uh, 4 different hours for a meeting. And I told people, come to any one of these 4. And nobody came to any of them. Well, there's one yet to go next Wednesday, but nobody has come. And these are all people. I only invited people who have some expertise or some experience or some at least academic knowledge, or
Oh.
having done research on um, nonviolent resistance. And these are all experts, and so they should be able to talk strategy, but they haven't.
Wow.
Um, maybe it's not as, it sounds like a great idea, but no. Maybe they have their own thing going,
Maybe they're
and
afraid to.
they don't, but that's even more true. What you said is more likely that I know in one case, I know one guy said, and he really is an expert. Um, and he said, I think he's in the US on a green card, whatever that is. It's just not, it's like a permanent resident.
Mhm.
And he's scared to have them start questioning him because they're going to throw out anybody they don't want around. And since he's a pro-democracy activist, um, might be that Trump decides he's not the right kind of guy to live in the U.S.
I bet it's because these people are afraid. They don't want to be identified. What we have found is like we talked to some of our neighbors, and they thank us for going for protesting because they are on green cards or they're in some of the targeted groups or whatever, and they're afraid to show themselves. So I'm feeling at my age, who cares? Um, I mean, that's fine. And it's funny because the demographics I've noticed, the one we recently had was good, but the one before, there were more than 1,000 people. It was quite the turnout. And the demographics have been kind of the older people, but there are a lot of young people as well. But I think mostly the older people and not very many ethnic. Okay, I've noticed. As far as Hispanics, I should say, not many Hispanics or natives that I'm seeing.
Hello,
There,
Victor.
here you go.
Is that Victor Kokonyasi?
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, yes, it's Victor Kokonyasi. Hello. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, I am not for a long time
I know.
because it is late evening in Moscow. So, but I am glad to see you. I am glad to see you.
Um,
And
I'm glad to
so,
see you too, and I'm glad that you're one of the few brave people who show up on these things from Russia. I've lost all my Russian friends, honey.
yeah,
I can't talk to anybody anymore
yeah.
because they're scared,
So,
and now if people living in the U.S. are scared,
yeah.
you know.
So,
I got to say
eh,
hello to Lou. Lou
I
Crease.
may say you, Meta, I do not hear very well. I may say you that everything is absolutely unpredictable. Absolutely unpredictable.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have some hopes for peace, but in general everything is very 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 unpredictable because that it is obvious that forces for war and against war are competing in the bureaucracies and to stop war even for any armistice is much more very difficult than to continue.
Yeah.
For bureaucratic reasons, for military reasons, it's much more difficult to stop than to continue. But I hope that killing will stop. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
Now, tell me what that's. You've given me a nutshell summary already that it's unpredictable. But now let's unpack that a little bit because I want to try to predict. I want to try to figure out how much is Russia suffering now. How much has it been really affected by the war so far? Um, I don't have enough contacts, and of course,
So,
that's better.
Central Russia is much more tolerant to Ukraine than the far regions. And the Central Russia, the life level in Central Russia is higher than in Ural and Siberia. When I travel throughout the Central Russia, I see very rarely people that are obviously connected with the war. What is very bad for all that day by day, year by year, Russia becomes more and more isolated from the European world, from the Western world. The Russian people is stigmatized as aggressor, etc. It is harmful, but inevitable in today's paradigm of political thinking. So I hope that it will stop. I see that the U.S. president really tries to do something. He may be criticized by people of very strong principles, but I see that he tries to find a solution that this mass killing will be stopped, because 100,000 people from both sides died during these 3 years and 3 months, and danger is very big that it will escalate, and that will be enormous number of deaths in Ukraine and in Russia, etc. I hope that it will be, nevertheless, that it will be stopped. It will be used.
How much is the economy suffering?
The military sector, the military segment of Russian economy is developing very actively and does not suffer any serious pressure. The military sector, the civil sector is under very big harm. Surely, the civil sector, just the sector that is opposite to military industry, is under harm, is under suffering, etc. So the best way to gain money now in Russia is to go to work on military factory. It will give much money, and
They pay them very well, right? They paid soldiers very well.
yeah, soldiers. It is difficult to say. It is enigmatic, but to work on the military factory, it is perfect for material sustainability of families, etc. To work in civil sector is risky, etc. The military, so the Western sanctions are formed in the shape that is very useful for military industry. So military industry is flourishing. And civil industry is in crisis.
Yeah, I do follow occasional reports on things like banks that are in trouble, and industries that they can't find workers, and building, the construction industry, for example, very few houses are being built or anything of that kind. Here comes Brian von Hertzen. We've got more people coming in, but you newcomers, Rose and Brian, I want you to know that I'm talking here with Victor Kogonyazny, who is an old friend of mine in Moscow. He is a very active member, a leading person in the Yabloko Party, which is frankly the only party I would have ever voted for if I could vote in Russia. As far as I can recall, that's the only party that I've ever had any use for. I don't know how they're doing now, but in fact, Victor, why don't you give me an impression of what the how far could the your Yabloko, your party, go in opposing the government or the war? Can you? You are a very brave man to come on my show and talk, because most of my Russian friends have given up, won't talk to me anymore, and I don't want to get them in trouble, so I don't call them either. But you show up, and that's wonderful. But and now, can you tell me a little about how much freedom you have as a
No freedom, no freedom, no
no
freedom.
freedom? No.
In two words, no freedom. In more details, we can say something, something with limited words. We can do anything, but also the activities are very, very limited, very limited. But Russian people are habited to Aesop language. We are habited to speak that everyone understands us without clear indication what we are saying. So, if I say to someone in the street that it is very bad that is going on now, so everyone understands what I want to say. Okay, so
Well, but how come you are the only person who ever shows up on any Zoom conversation that I organize? Russians are all of them are scared of me, I think, and I wonder why you are not.
So I don't know. So I really don't know. Concerning my personal dangers. So for first years, every time when I spoke in some Zoom that is recorded, when I wrote something in Facebook, I was afraid that. Some days after that, I was afraid that something will happen with me. Now, so 3 years, maybe. It is very difficult to understand who is in under which danger. I observe that, for instance, the very different situation is in different regions. In different regions. For instance, I know a region, an oblast in Russia, that no one was arrested for anti-war activities. No one was arrested because of governor's position. Because of governor's position, and in other regions, so very active prosecutions, arrests, because the other position, more aggressive position of the governor. So it depends. It depends.
Well,
It depends much.
excuse me, are you saying that you think that the local or the provincial or
Local authorities are very influenced from the point of view whether they will actively prosecute people of anti-war position or not. So maybe because I live in Moscow, so it is not so dangerous.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you a minute ago you were saying that eastern part, Siberia and other
Yeah.
eastern regions were more active in the war. Now, my impression is I've read, and I don't know whether it's still true, that when they draft or whether mobilize, so they don't use the word draft, but when they recruit soldiers, when they capture young men and put them in the army to go fight, they tend to pick people who are from the East.
Yes. Yes.
True.
Yes. Yes.
Why? I mean, why?
So it is enormous unemployment in Ural and Siberia. Unemployment, low qualification. Closed options to emigrate because the Western countries do not allow to Russians to find new home anywhere. So it is many various causes. Behavior of Ukraine that I don't know for which reason went to Kursk region and motivated many Russians to resist to that. So it is many reasons, many reasons. So
And now tie that into the different public opinion in the regions. Are you saying that the people in the East are more in favor of the war, really support the
no,
war?
it is not. No, it is not. It is not. So it is simply so to do the war. The Russian government needs only 2 million people in the army. Only 2 millions. So 2 millions. It is only 1.5% of Russian population. It is very in percent relation. It is very small number. In absolute number, it is big, because the Russian population is big.
Yeah.
So we have more frustrated, more number of frustrated people in the east of Russia. More number, surely. It is not. It does not witness that the west, the east of Russia is more aggressive, is more for the war, etc. I don't know. We have no polls, no public opinion research, etc. It only says that this population is poorer and gives more people. And more people there have no other option than to participate in the war. So maybe because they are far from Ukraine, because they are far from Central Russia, they have moved more pro-Russian, more anti-Ukrainian. Maybe, but I did not never do this research. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, now then I ask you about the internal dynamics of the Yabloko party. You know, of course I don't expect you to be able to pull it off, but I would love it if you could set me up for an interview with Yavlinsky.
Yeah. So,
I once did interview him many years ago,
uh-huh.
but I don't imagine he would be up for a conversation with people like me now.
It is now a little bit difficult, but who knows? It is now a little bit difficult. But in big cities, in big locations, young people are coming to Yabloko because of their anti-war position. In Moscow, in St. Petersburg, in some other central Russia, big towns. I don't know what happens in Siberia. I don't know. I expect. I guess that that people there are rather passive. Much more passive than in Central Russia.
Okay, now
They traditionally are very politically and socially passive. Traditionally, yes, it is.
now you mentioned young people briefly.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about that, because the one of the most interesting, that's a mild word for it, one of the most shocking findings resulting from this recent election of Trump is that young males in the US have swung very much to the right, and young males, 20-year-olds up to, I guess, late 20s, something like that. Those young men are becoming very reactionary, very right wing, and they support Trump more.
So they support Trump. I guess, I don't know the U.S. social picture, but I guess they do not so much support Trump. They rather see mm, uh, see mm, uh, they are rather disappointed in a very dull political position of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I think so because I don't think that they are very favoring for Trump, but I think that they simply rather disappointed in the last tendencies and inertian way of administration of last democratic administrations. I
Well,
think so.
Victor, I think we could say that that's true probably of the whole bunch of people who voted for Trump that shocked us. You know, the Americans voting is that the fact that the majority of the voters supported Trump has to be something like the explanation you've given. But the specific question is about young males because the gap between girls and boys, between young women and or even middle-aged women, but mostly young women and young men. There's like a 20 percentage point gap between their point of view about Trump. And the girls, the young women, of course, are more like us. And these young men they are part of a group of people who are, there's a whole feeling apparently that maleness, masculinity now is, they're feeling beleaguered. The
I don't
suicide
know.
rate in the U.S. is higher among men. They're not doing as well at the universities. They're not getting successful in their careers compared to how the women are doing and so on. There's a huge gap between men and women.
I don't I may say that I think that they were very disappointed in Kamala Harris, and in case of another candidacy, they may behave in another way. So I think it is my vision. So then, for us, in my view, Trump is really trying to build peace between Russia and Ukraine. That's good. That's good, and I do not see that Russian young men are sharing, for instance, Putin's position. So
What I'm thinking is how you seem to say that young people are opposing the war more than older people in Russia.
sure,
And
young people in Russia are much more opposing the war than old people. Old people in Russia get information from the TV sets. So, and TV is alarming. TV is strongly anti-Ukrainian. Old people grew up in tradition of obedience to the government, to the power. So then young people are of other mood, and I think the young people really surely are much more opposite to the war. It is the fact. It is the fact.
Rose Dyson, do you have a question for Victor?
The old people have no danger to go to the war. Old people, they have no danger personally to go to the war. Young people have these dangers, particularly young men have very strong danger to be mobilized for the war. So they do not want to happen that.
That would figure anywhere, but in fact, in the U.S., the older people are not as much affected by this as the young men. That's what's the shocking thing, is the attitude of young men supporting Trump. Anyway, Rose, I want to let you, I only want people who are going to ask questions or comment a conversation with Victor at the moment because we can't count on having a person from Russia very long, and we want to make good use of his time. Yeah, Rose
Yes.
Covington.
Okay. I am intrigued with this, his response, or your response, Victor, that there's not such a great need for manpower, and that most of it is coming from the eastern part of Europe. I mean, we hear in the Western media about North Korean soldiers, for example, being recruited to fight in the war as well. So, is there not, to some extent anyway, a gradual depletion of manpower for? And I have a comment about why young men are all over the world, perhaps, are gravitating toward right-leaning positions. But I'll leave that for later.
Please, more slowly. I do not hear you well.
Okay. Yes,
Please.
repeat it slowly, Rose, for him.
Okay, I'm wondering about this comment you've made about there not being a shortage of manpower for fighting purposes in the war against Ukraine, because there seems to have been, at least in the Western media, reports of North Korean soldiers being recruited for fighting.
Yeah.
So, why is that the case?
Why not? I don't know. I am not a military specialist, so it is an agreement between a very secret agreement between Russian government and Kim Chen Un. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, thank you.
I absolutely don't know anything about the number of these soldiers and their function in the war. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolute secret. It is confirmed. It is the fact, but it is absolute secret in details.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question that you want to put to Victor or comment? Because it's a great opportunity. We almost never have anybody here with us from Russia. So, anybody else? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Meta. So I will leave you now because it is a little bit too late, and I have other duties for the moment. Thank you very much, and all the best to you, and hope to see you soon.
I wish you all good wishes for your.
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you,
you have a
Meta.
book
Thank
out, but we could probably. Why don't you put the name of your book in the chat? If you maybe you've gone. Have you gone? I think he's gone. No, there you're still there. Put your name of your book in the chat, and I'll put it on the.
I will send you again everything about my books. I will send you the reference to buy the PDF of 2 books. Yes.
Yeah,
Surely.
do it right away so I can put that right over your picture in this when I edit this. So
Yeah.
today, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you. Bye. Well, hello, folks. Several people have come since Victor arrived, but I did want to take advantage of his presence. Lou Kreisberg, it's good to see you. The last little while, I've missed you a couple of times, and I wondered if you're okay. Are you?
Well, not entirely, I must say. I'm having more trouble with still undefined, undiagnosed, but I'm trying to get some better hold on what my physical condition is.
Are you in hospital now?
Pardon?
Are you in hospital?
No, I'm at home, and I'm just not very mobile, so I depend upon the internet world to some extent to remain engaged, but and I managed to do some work but I find I read very slowly and I fall asleep. But this is presumably, apparently, it's according to the physicians that have looked at my blood tests. This is not necessarily a result of simply aging.
Oh, that. Oh, that.
Critics are
But,
standing your
but at 98, I could think blame that for everything. But anyway, I was taken with the discussion about the situation in Russia. I have lost contact, as you have, with the Russians that we knew back when they were very optimistic. But this matter of young men, I think that's one reason that people talk about right-wing pluralism and not of pluralism, but of
populism. I bet you want
populism, and which has always had some misogyny as a part of the picture. But I think in the U.S., at least, a good portion of this is by the Trumpian and Republican extremists who, his MAGA people, to blame the difficulties that men may be having to immigration or to somehow women. And after all, there was a great transformation in the recent years of women's rights being more recognized and more equal. And for some men, that put them down. But I think, and there is some competition, but I think it was played on, as the right-wing Republicans have done, to say, oh, this is due to immigration, or it's due that you're having trouble, or it's women, and we need to restore our position in the by changing it. And I think that's not been hidden by the many people in the leadership of the Republican Party, and the real reasons that men are maybe in more trouble is that the nature of the economies is different. Industrial work now is like 8% of the workforce in the United States. It's service. It's all the growth in the economy is in work that women are have always had a bigger role, and that's expanding. So some of this is based on a reality which is denied by the politicians who want to exploit it. And they have been very successful in doing that in the United States.
For the last 3 issues of Peace Magazine, we have an editorial committee that gets together and says, well, what kinds of stories do we want to try to get somebody to write for us? Lots of things come at us, whether we want them or not. We just say yes or no. But sometimes we also try to reach out and plan, get stories that we should try to be sure and cover. So every time we've said, now we need a story about this trend toward um, the manosphere, this trend toward getting men who are resentful of their lowering position in society, because in fact the condition, the status, the income, the health, the suicide level, everything, especially men's longevity, for especially working class men, has just gone to the dogs. It's really in bad shape in the US. And now that's showing up this radically different attitude of the young men. Because now when you get a bunch of young men who are pro-Trump, they're going to stay that way for the rest of their lives. They're not going to change. So what's causing that and what should we do about it? Well, I've been trying to find an article, somebody who'll write an article, somebody who's an expert on that topic, who studied it, and who will produce an article for Peace Magazine about it. I can't find anybody. Well, maybe I haven't looked right, but you folks may know of somebody who's written magazine articles or books or something on this topic, and maybe you can suggest somebody for me to try to contact. Anyway, Rose, you have your hand up again. Yes, dear.
Yes, well, on that subject, I have been doing some research on it. I've written a paper on the impact of tech on society at large, but just to zero in on young men, it's not only in the U.S. where young men had a great deal to do with getting Trump elected, where they're moving more to the right. This has also been observed in Canada with our own election taking place tomorrow. The Conservative Party under Poilievre has more support among young males than he does of the older boomer crowd, as it's sometimes called. There's been a lot written on the extent to which, and you've already alluded to this, Meta, that young men are disillusioned about their prospects in society, whether it's through work or their status, because of the white male privilege that's been bandied about so much. But it's not only white males that are attracted to Trump or voted for him or are supporting Poilievre here in Canada. It's also men of color and so on. And it's in large part because of the cultural environment in which they've been educated. This is they like the Trump rallies better than Kamala Harris's because they were more fun. They're more chaotic. The popular culture that they absorb through video games and social media has the vitriol and the hatred and the kind of dialogue that Trump has become so good at. So that is, Trump, or rather, David Frum wrote a book about the support for the right-wing positions and Trump following his election the first time. And it had a great deal to do with the extent to which uneducated men or men without college education in particular who are unemployed, the extent to which they immerse themselves in this kind of misogynist culture that bends toward the right, whether it's pornography or other forms of violent entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it may be that the resistance, which is rising very swiftly now in the United States, the demonstrations are almost daily. May Day is being celebrated like it hasn't been celebrated since the turn of the century. I think this is there's an opportunity in that. What Trump has done and said and is so wicked and tortured and cruel for so many people, it repels more and more people now.
Except
Um,
the young men who've been nurtured on this kind of entertainment since they came out of the womb.
well, they may switch because they're not getting what they thought they'd get.
Right.
That's not what the research shows. There's, I mean, if you look at what happened on January 6th in 2020, the storming of the White House, the leaders, the QAnon Proud Boys people, they've been educated now for a number of years, or at least a decade. So nothing much is going to change, in my view, until the cultural environment is taken more seriously.
I have a question for you, Rose. You know, I am in the United States. But here's the question. What is the education level of these young men, and also their economic situation? Because I'm wondering if that has something to do with it.
Well, according to what I've read and what other people have tracked and written, is there are first of all, social media is creating a lot of disconnects or diminishing the social engagement on the part of a lot of people, including young males. So the chat groups and chat rooms for some of them are resulting in like-minded people. Well, you know all about this, the silos that people congregate in on the internet. But this is intertwined with the violent entertainment that's been out there for so long. And the video games are the first-person shooter video games are the most popular form of entertainment among young people. And there are a lot of reasons why this is problematic. It's because of the interactive nature of them. And so this, together with the I suppose the discontent that a lot of the white men in particular, the Proud Boys and so on, the messages they exchange, it mushrooms and it spreads. And so they're not only non-college educated young men that are attracted to this, but a lot of college educated people as well.
The other thing, though, which is relevant to her question, is that, in fact, the young men are not doing as well in education as girls are. The young women there are more young women in university than men now, and they get better marks and so on. And now the women are doing fine in terms of their careers, but these guys are not going up the ladder very well. So you could, it's really
a lot of these
for a good reason. They got, they're sore because they're not doing as well. And I don't know, it's, there's also this thing about incel, which I don't even want to go there. Young men resenting the fact they can't find a sexual partner. And they apparently organize. I can't imagine organizing for a thing like that, but but that's what they're doing. Anyway.
Well, there are DEI factors that are here too, that men often feel that they're being passed over in the educational process when it comes to advancement as well as jobs.
Yeah, that's true. Well, here we have some more people coming in. Let's have a look at. Some people are not showing their faces, which annoys me. If you're going to be with us, then be with us. Let us see who you are. But here's Charles Tauber, who doesn't mind having his face seen. Hello, Charles. How are you?
Hi, Meta. Hi, everybody.
Hey, we've been talking about young men and why young men have gone to the dogs. Poor guys are really having a hard time. Do you know anything about something comparable in Europe? Is that happening everywhere, or we had a Russian here with us for half an hour, and I was asking him that, but I don't think I didn't get the feeling that it was as much the case from what he said in Russia. Anyway, what's going on in
tell me what you were saying so I can put it into our context.
Okay. we had a man here from Russia talking to us. And one of the questions I asked him was whether young men in Russia are more supportive of the war than young women, because that is strongly the case now in the US. And the young men in general have turned to the right, becoming more Trump supporters and so on, which we've been discussing. Why is this happening? But I just wonder how widely that is going on outside the US, if at all. Is that happening in Croatia?
Absolutely. The whole male, how shall I say it, philosophy, attitude, etc. It's very stigmatized not to support war, not to support violence for men.
Is that new?
No,
Oh,
not at all.
oh. See, what we're seeing in the US
but-
is a real change. Since the last election, from the previous election to this one, there's been a big switch among young men. And it's worrisome, but I don't know how widespread that is in other countries, if at all.
Well, there was a study here a couple of years ago in Vukovar, where they said that, for example, this generation, excuse me, is more traumatized than the generation of the war through the transmission. And the politicians are really supporting all of this. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Now you're saying that the Croatian politicians support Russia's war against Ukraine?
The Croatian politicians are supporting anything that has to do with getting money for the defense industry. And they also are supporting this war in terms of the previous wars.
Whose side are they on? The Croatian politicians, are they supporting Ukraine or Russia?
They're supporting Ukraine, but the Serbians are supporting Russia. So
The Serbians in Croatia or the Serbian government?
the Serbian government.
Well, that's usual. I think I shouldn't be that simple.
Yeah,
but
no, it is. And there's the whole question of Bosnia and the division of Bosnia.
yeah.
So the Republika Srpska is strongly supporting Russia. People like Milorad Dodik. And I mean, I think I've said this before, and I've said it here before, that I expect another war here at some point. I think what's happening in Ukraine, which is very close to here, bear in mind, is very, very dangerous for all of Europe, because it could explode into a war very, very easily.
Well, it's interesting. This fellow, Victor, whom I've known a long time, is an active person, very influential in the Yabloko party. And I visited him in his home even. But he said something that I think he assumed that we all agreed to, but I have trouble myself with it. He was happy that Trump is trying to bring an end to the war. And, full stop. He doesn't say anything more about the conditions and the terms under which Trump is supporting the ceasefire. Well, Trump wants a ceasefire that would basically give Russia what it once, what
All of Ukraine.
it could have had just, if it had won the first
Yeah.
week of the war. So all of this war that the Ukrainians have put up, resisting the aggression, Trump would, negate that and just give the whole shooting match to Putin.
Sure.
And my friend Victor didn't seem troubled by that, so long as it puts an end to the war. Well, I'm very, very troubled because I certainly don't like seeing people die in wars. On the other hand, I certainly don't like seeing countries being rewarded for aggression against another country and attacking them and taking their land. And it's not easy to find a ground, position on this issue that doesn't tilt in one way or another, give up one side of the concern rather than another. So I've been ambivalent, but not too ambivalent. I basically think right now this is a war that I don't see how we could support just ending it on any terms at present. I mean, I guess we need to have that conversation again now, where we all stand on that. I mean, you may have very different.
I'm a pacifist, so, and I think that there are other ways of solving these things. The point, I think the politicians are all criminals. I don't think there's a politician that isn't a criminal. But maybe that's,
In the whole world?
yes, simple as that.
Don't say that, then we have no hope.
No, we have hope through nonviolent conflict transformation.
Well, after you get nonviolent conflict resolution, you got to have a government. And when you have a government, you got politicians. And so we're back where
Maybe,
they're all crooks.
maybe.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else on this? Yeah, Marilyn.
I actually, and I don't know if you want to go back and talk, I want to talk about something Rose brought up, but maybe you don't want to. I mean, I don't know if you want to go ahead and, okay. Rose said something very interesting, and she was talking about video games with these young people. Well, I mean, I have to comment on this because I've seen a lot of those video games, and young men, they are so into it. They are so realistic. It is scary to see these things, and they're so violent and killing each other and destroying buildings and all sorts of stuff. But they are the way it is now. I mean, I'm looking at these, I'm like, oh my God, it looks real. I mean, the gore, the blood, the people, the individuals. And I think, I'm a behaviorist, though my subject matter are animals, not humans. But even so, I see that these type of videos are definitely desensitizing. I see them as desensitizing, but I suppose you could see them in one way, maybe with somehow or other, these kids, these young men, not seeing individuals or people as people anymore and being so angry. I mean, I really do see them being influenced by this stuff. So I see exactly what Rose is saying. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Rose? You wound up Rose now and she's ready to go. She's
Well, look, there's tons of research that's been done on this, underscoring the socialization that comes with the steady, heavy viewing of these games. And Meta certainly knows of U.S. Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman's research on this, when he's written books on how the mass murders that have taken place one kind or another, whether it's in schools or shopping malls or on the street, or even the way it's fueled terrorism in one way or another, has can be traced to the release on the market of these kind of games. And from an economic point of view, they do better than movies and music combined on a global basis. So this is not only something that the people in North America are absorbing and consuming. It's all over the world, because popular culture has been a leading export of the largest economy in the world, the U.S. So there people in every corner of the world have been affected by this, and it's the polls have also shown that even after Trump got himself elected, and there's been all this hand wringing over the tariffs and the upsetting of the economy, and is it going to collapse and whatnot, that young men are still quite happy with Trump. His popularity or poll numbers have shown that his approval rate has gone down with every cohort except young men, and they like the chaos. It's familiar to them. So that might sound like an oversimplification, but that is a factor that needs to be taken more seriously, in my view.
I want to reinforce something that Rose just said, because I was shocked a few years ago at something that David Grossman wrote, and saying that he had been studying the individuals who had been mass murderers, shooting in schools and so on. And he has a whole file of these guys, and every single one of them had been obsessed with playing video games, violent video games. Every one of them.
Yeah, and it's not only yeah. Mark Bowery, who teaches at the University of Ottawa, as well as Royal Military College, has written a book on this. He's written a number, not only on the harmful effects of this kind of popular culture, video games, and the links with terrorism, but also the right-wing inclinations of these young men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Marilyn.
Not only that, but this is why I think it's so scary, because in a way it's training these kids to kill people in war through drone wars or whatever. However, they're removed from the actual people, and that's exactly what these video games do. They make it so that it's like they're not. It's unreal for them, and it's easy for them to make that kill, and that is perhaps what it looks like when they go to war. Wherever they're fighting, they're killing people, and it's easy to do. You don't see the humanity in who you're actually killing. Anyway, that's my opinion on it.
Charles.
I just wondered.
Go ahead.
Let Charles.
No, go ahead, Louis.
Okay, Lou.
I was just wondering. I've not been a student of those games, but I remember that the fanaticism of the Japanese with these games. And it seemed to me, much greater and more intense than in the United States. And of course, it has. There's no channel. I don't see any stories about this having the kind of impact that we're attributing to it in the U.S. or in some European countries. So there's, I think, other things in play that build on it, maybe, and placate it. And I think some of that is Trump's appeal. But I think we should understand how sudden the results of his behavior is being decried. There is a reality out there, and we can hope for that becoming more and more evident.
Yeah, maybe we want to talk about that, because we're coming up to May 1st. Somebody sent me a connection so that I could watch it or something. I'm not sure what I've done with that, but But as I understand it, I haven't been informed sufficiently. But I read the newspaper. I get the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Globe and Mail, and then any number of other newspapers on my news aggregator, like the LA Times and the Guardian, and whatever. And I don't think I saw that much publicity about the event that took place called Hands Off. There was apparently a huge demonstration a few weeks ago, and I didn't see it reported very well, or at least I wasn't aware of it. Tell me what is being planned now. Do you anticipate that there's something big going to happen on May 1st?
Yes.
Yes.
There are many
Yes.
local and national organizations which are calling for major demonstrations in every city in the United States. And that has not been a long tradition. I mean, the tradition of May Day has been long, but to have massive demonstrations, no. And now we can expect them all across the country, every city.
You're right.
Syracuse has had many demonstrations already on various occasions, and there's very little coverage of them except by Rachel Maddow, who gives good daily daily reports on the demonstrations in cities across the United States.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, Charles.
Yeah, my reaction is that the video games and the rest are a reflection and a reinforcement of societal attitudes. That violence and war are inherently accepted in society as a way of going about things. And how do you reflect that? Through current technology. I think that's what's happening.
Well, if I can just respond to that, yes,
Sure.
Violence has always been with us, and other countries are responsible too. But I think there's the profit-driven component that has to be taken into account here, because look, from the time children are young, we're trying to socialize them into more peaceful ways of interacting with each other. I mean, there are all these community building strategies that have been built up over the years or centuries, and so on. But with children, they or with capitalism, what you have is a combination of, I guess, the human inclination to respond to violence or sex, for that matter, because that's the way in which the people who are promoting popular culture, whether it's advertising or some sort of product like movies, television, video games, people respond and capture, their eyeballs are captured more quickly and more readily with either sex or violence. And this is a component that also goes into the designing of algorithms in social media. And artificial intelligence, for that matter, where computers are machine learning and talking to each other. So what we've got here is not only human inclinations and some of the age-old customs that have come down to us through the centuries, but we've now got information technology that is profit-driven and is reinforcing these things, and that's what has to change.
I'm going to say profit driven, and then let's not forget the high testosterone levels of young men.
Well, sure, that's part of the more human components in the way they're born, I guess, or made up or have evolved over the centuries and been socialized to some extent as well.
Hey, now, let's assume you're right, and I tend to believe almost everything you say. I've done a little research on my own, and I think it conforms to what Rose is saying. But I don't know what to do about it. We're here to talk policy mostly, and I don't have a policy on this. I don't know what to do about. Do we want to ban this? Do we want to? I mean, if you're a parent and you've got a kid who's 18 years old, you can still say, long as you're living with me, you can't play these damn things. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe it's not. I mean, what do we want to do to curtail this?
Well, we have to set aside that hardy perennial where nothing can be done to restrict any of this because it's too grave a threat to freedom of expression. Anybody that's read Yuval Harari's book, and what he's saying is something that many others have said too. Hinton, the Nobel Prize winner this last fall on artificial intelligence, has said we have to create some guardrails on what is allowed and what isn't, because now we take cancel culture, for example. There are certain kinds of rights and people who are silenced if hate speech is allowed to predominate. It's going to be hard to do, but we have to start developing regulations and lean on our policymakers to put in some checks and balances. Remember this Frances Hagen, who worked for Facebook when she was a whistleblower. I think it was in 2019, and this I think she went before Congress to talk about her observations that Facebook was literally affecting the countries around the world in terms of the rise of the right and so on. So either we expect more of the policymakers around the world on this, or because we can't just assume that this is something that parents and teachers are going to handle with their children.
Yeah, but the problem, dear, is once you allow for censorship, political censorship, making sure that people don't propose things or promote things that you don't like, which is what we want to do here. You have a situation going on right now in the government where Trump is using censorship against progressive people, against the press, excluding them from the briefing room of the White House and so on, trying to punish or curb the kinds of reporting that goes on. He's saying that some of these networks should have to have, we should penalize them with extra taxes or run them out of business one way or another because he doesn't like what they're saying. Or they should have to present at least as much in favor of the right-wing interpretations of stories as they do their critical left-wing positions.
Yeah.
And so,
well,
once you allow the introduction of political control over the content of stories, you're going to get exactly that, and you may lose. It may be the other side that wins. And
look.
I'm more ambivalent about this issue than anything else I have come across for a very long time.
I think it's useful to go back in history, the last, let's say, 70 or 80 years anyway. There has been an erosion of what the First Amendment implies. And when, for example, films first came out, they were not part of the political speech that would be protected under the First Amendment. And that was ruled by the Supreme Court of the U.S. That changed because of profit-driven inclinations. That case was overturned in 1957, I think it was, and it opened the floodgates so that any kind of speech would be allowed, regardless of whether it was political speech, pornography, or violent entertainment. So this is widening the parameters of what is considered speech to be protected has gradually expanded in conjunction or collaboration with profit-driven intentions. And then there was the fairness doctrine that was gotten rid of, that opened the floodgates for talk radio and the lack of balanced reporting that you would like to see more of, Meta.
I'm not sure I want balanced reporting. I'm not sure I want any kind of control. But I want information to be somehow fact checked. If people want to say stupid things, I'm not sure that they shouldn't be allowed to say them. But if they're going to actually give misinformation, I think it would be wonderful to have a little red flag pop up and say, this is not true, whenever we know that they're saying something that's not true. But beyond that, I don't know what the boundaries should be. And I think it is one of the most problematic issues right now in my own mind is I really don't believe in censorship, but I really worry about having all of this stuff out there causing the kinds of trouble, whether it's disinformation, misinformation, etc., or whether it's getting people psychologically accustomed to seeing violence and perpetrating violence and training them. As a matter of fact, as I understand it, there was one guy who had been doing video games where you do the shooting, you have to target. And he was the best sniper anybody ever saw. I mean, he was able to kill people with a mass murder. It turns out he killed people with extraordinary accuracy. Unbelievable that anybody, without having been trained in the military by people training snipers, that they could have produced anybody that's accurate in killing. And he did it just by practicing with his video game. He got so good with the video game that he was a good sharpshooter. So you actually build skills with this thing. I can see how all the things that you're saying, Rose, are right. And yet, when I look at the implication of any form of censorship that I can think of, there are real negative side effects or downsides anyway.
I think we have to perhaps make better distinctions between individual freedom of expression and corporate freedom of enterprise. Because I think that when a lot of speech, or particularly as it manifests itself in the cultural environment, is really profit driven. I think it's a stretch to call that freedom of expression that needs to be protected.
Okay.
And I just one more thing, Marilyn, in response to something you said earlier about some of the technology in military machinery, drones, for example, enable people to go out and kill because they're so removed from their targets. It's not the same as old traditional warfare. Actually, there's at least one documentary I could remember seeing called Drones that reviewed the post-traumatic stress disorder experienced by those who actually fought that kind of war. In other words, those soldiers in those drone kind of operated flights, I guess, are not as immune as one might think. And also, when it comes to the operators, speaking of the eye-hand coordination that makes these people such sharpshooters, the military go to these conferences, these video game conferences, to do recruiting to see who is going to be best at these things. So the synergy between the military-industrial entertainment complexes has grown quite tight in recent decades.
Okay, well, everything you're saying is right, I think, Rose, and yet the truth is the arguments that are being put forward for trying to regulate are being used the winners are the people who are the right wing populist authoritarians. It's the Trump supporters who are, uh, now being able to curb uh, actual good reporting and the expression of concern about democracy, etc. We are in for a very bad period of against freedom of expression. We are finding, universities are having their teaching functions impaired, and the press is being tampered with, and every regulation, everything we do to regulate anything is working for the benefit of the bad guys. That's what's a terrible thing.
It is, and there's a new information or news outlet called Telegram. It was discussed, I think, on CNN recently. I jotted down all the particulars on it, the date it was aired, and so on. And they are a group that's come together, arguing in favor of freedom of expression. In other words, no barriers on anything, and they've developed and mushroomed and grown to the point where their sole objective is to bring down democratic governments. That's their mandate. It's called Telegram, and it was aired on CNN. I could give you the date and time if you like.
Well, I would like to think in really practical terms about what can be done to protect people who are now really feeling threatened. Now, I have been in touch with a number of people lately who have said that I am afraid to speak up. I'm afraid that I'm here on a green card or something, and I'm afraid the government's going to do something, take my rights away from me. All kinds of people are scared to say anything that might be in opposition to Trump. And yet there are big activities being mobilized, groups being not only demonstrations, as you say you're going to see on the 1st of May, but organizing subgroups like teachers' unions or whatever, to probably healthcare workers are trying to find ways of banding together and developing a strategy. My great wish a week ago was to be able to kind of create a discussion among strategists working on different aspects of defending democracy or defending the rights of government workers and other people who are being attacked.
Yes, there are many organizations, at least in the United States, which are longstanding. Public Citizen is one was for years doing work about bad use of advertising and machines, and they're very good at bringing legal cases, of organizing protests. American Civil Liberties Union has long been a guardian, mostly using legal means. There are with the rise of MAGA diversity and solidarity, which are national organizations that mobilize voters. I mean, I think the protests and the resistance and the fall in public opinion generally is a warning to all the Republicans in Congress in the United States that they're at risk of being defeated at the next election. And
I agree with you, but I think before the next election happens, a lot of us are going to be in jail. I think this is not a short, a regular electoral process.
yes,
I think democracy is going to be gone before the next election. There will not be another fair election. There will be people, American citizens, sent to El Salvador to cells that have 25 people per cell in them. That's what's going to happen unless we can do emergency action to get emergency resistance movements going. And that
but we need both going on, obviously. And taking immediate action is what these organizations are doing. They're getting more money. I do my part. To bring cases, to mobilize, to protect individuals when they are threatened. I think we should celebrate that as well, because that gives you faith and hope. If otherwise it all seems too overwhelming and too inducement of despair. And by God, we shouldn't despair.
Well, I want to do what I can to support it at the international level, because this is not just a U.S. problem. It's a problem all over the world. And
yes,
we need to think in terms of how we can create support from one country to another. Sometimes we can, it's a matter of using economic pressure, just as, Trump is using tariffs and whatnot to try to force Canada to become a 51st state. Canada has certain things that it can do to hurt the U.S. And I'm thinking, for example, of not buying these F-35 airplanes. And another thing that I learned just the other day, which I think is also very important, worth talking about. Gordon Edwards has written about it, and I'll be publishing it in the magazine. It's that Ontario has ordered 4 of these small modular reactors. Well, they're not small, they're 21 stories tall, but they're definitely no safer in terms of they've taken away, the reason they're called smaller is they've taken away a lot of the heavy shieldings and other safety features that used to make the other reactors, somewhat less dangerous. But at any rate, the point is that Ontario has ordered these reactors, and they require that they're not only made by the U.S. and invented in the U.S., etc., but they require enriched uranium. And so Canada will be required to depend on the U.S. for enriched uranium in order to have our own electricity. Well, now that if your country has just been declared an enemy of the U.S., you don't want to give your electric power control over to your enemy. So we ought to shut down, the contract for those 4 small modular reactors and plan something else instead. I see that Richard Denton has arrived. Hello, Richard. We've covered the waterfront here today, but I know that you are fairly familiar with issues about radiation hazards. And what I've just said may be something you're familiar with. Are you? Have you read what Gordon Edwards has said about you don't want to build these reactors?
Yes, I think that there's several things. One, Gordon always points out that nuclear reactors are very expensive, so they're not going to be producing cheaper electricity than renewables, solar and wind. Two, they take a long time to build, so therefore they're not going to be an answer to our immediate environmental crisis. Three, are for the military. The military wants to get off oil because of the long.
I mean, all of these arguments that you're citing are ones that had been brought out all along beforehand. But this is a new argument. This new argument that I think is important is that the Canadian electricity or the Ontario electricity would be produced with fuel that it would have to be obtained from the U.S. And the U.S. then could turn off the electric power for Canada and completely. I mean, this would be a really strong military. It wouldn't be military, but it would be a catastrophe for Canadians to be dependent on the U.S. But it's the same argument that is being used for why we don't want to buy these stupid planes, these fighter planes from the U.S. We should get them from somebody that we can trust, who's not going to be our enemy. And that's the new argument that I think is extremely powerful and really worth putting out there, because if the reasoning behind the not buying fighter planes is valid, then I think the reasoning behind not buying small modular reactors from the U.S. is even more powerful. Right or not? Answer me.
Small modular nuclear reactors are still going to have the problem of what
I think you're breaking up.
really expensive.
Yeah, we can't.
Spending that money on climate as opposed to supporting their military.
Okay, you've gone blank. We have to move on, I guess. Who else has a thought? By the way, as far as I know, Brian von Hertzen is here and not showing his face. Brian.
Yeah.
Please.
Good morning.
You join us and turn on your microphone and your camera.
Well, the sun is just coming up here, and it's always tomorrow here in Australia. So good morning, everyone, and it's great to hear all your wonderful voices. And I'm just waking up.
Okay, but you've been here for a while now. You can tell us what you're up to, because we've talked about everything else.
Sure. We're working to regenerate life in the ocean and on soils. I think we're kind of doing it one step at a time and looking at how we can help people repair the climate. We're now dual citizens in Australia, and we'll be voting with the compulsory voting system in the next election in a week. And unlike America, they encourage postal voting, and so we managed to get those ballots. And I am concerned about all the people that need to do postal voting in the U.S. because those freedoms, those rights are being limited in the United States.
I have heard that just as right now Trump has strengthened the possibility that Carney, the Liberal, will win in Canada. Also, Trump has strengthened the possibility of that, and you'll have a Labour government re-elected in Australia. Am I correct? And please elaborate on that, because I don't even know the names of the people involved.
No, it's fine. Albanese is the Prime Minister of Australia. I've had a chance to meet him a couple times, and my partner spent 5 minutes with him here in Queensland just a year or two ago. So it's great. The access to government seems greater here than it is in the United States. And it is true that at the moment, Labour is enjoying maybe a 2 percentage point lead. It's very close. It's so close that I think it's within polling error. But it's promising. And what I do like more than anything else is the ranked voting system that we have here in Australia. which means that you vote for the party that you believe in the most, and then you list your next party next all the way down. You have to list, I think 6 preferences. And with ranked preference voting, it's much better in terms of really enabling a diversity of parties and a diversity of opinions, and it gets around the two-party degeneracy that we see in the United States today.
It's not a slam dunk then that who's going to win.
Not a slam dunk at all. I think it's a two percentage point lead at the moment, and that's been the kind of error that we've seen in the United States that have resulted in surprise results.
Well, I think it's also not a slam dunk anymore in Canada, although I don't follow it closely at all. But, look like 2 weeks ago, Carney had it sewed up. He was way ahead of Poilievre, but whatever. But I gather it's narrowed a little bit now. So, who knows? I think it's tomorrow that we have the election.
Yeah, I heard it was. And along those lines, just be warned that liberal down under means right leaning, whereas liberal in the north is left leaning. So it has something to do with the hemispheres, I think. I don't know. All the toilets drain the other way in Australia.
Something about the way the direction that water goes down in the sink when you're in this. There's something about when you cross the hemisphere, the water starts going counterclockwise or vice versa. Is that true?
Yeah, it's the Coriolis force. It's definitely the Coriolis force. And it's always tomorrow here in Australia. So, I'm very happy to be planning and experiencing the future here.
Yeah, well, it's something goes on probably in somebody's brains too. One way north of the equator, we have brains that swirl one direction. Okay, I guess my theory isn't.
Well, also, just to add that there is a difference between a change in the border. In Canada, red is liberal, which is left, whereas in south of the border, it is Republican and right-winging, and likewise blue here in Canada is conservative, which is right-winging, and south of the border, it's Democratic, but I'm not sure that the Democrats are very left-winging right now. They're both parties are hawkish. So
yeah, well, it's a good point, Richard. I'm very happy to say Australia shares the same colors as Canada, so you can use that as a guide when the hemispheres are confusing.
Well, I'm a dual citizen, so I have trouble. I have to switch colors all the time. When is your election?
May 3rd, so it's coming up just a few days, and we're learning how to vote below the line, which involves lots and lots of analysis.
What do you mean below the line?
Well, Australia has a line. Above the line, you're voting for parties. Below the line, you're voting for candidates. And I think if you're voting for independent candidates, you need to vote below the line.
I see. Okay. Well, that's
important. And I will say, one of the bright spots in Australian politics is the exponential rise of the green and the teal independent electors and candidates, because they're bringing a breath of fresh air that is not captured by corporate politics, unlike the major parties.
Well, that's good. Do they have any new any issues that they bring into the discourse? Because
yes,
I think the problem with one of the big problems with parties in the U.S. is that they have their own idea of what are the issues, and they tell you, here's a list. It's abortion, it's gun control, it's you have a whole bunch of things that you get to check about what's important and what's not important. But they make up the list, and it doesn't come out of the talking to the people. And I think what you have to have is somebody goes around and says, what is it that you're upset about? And
right now,
completely different.
Right now, climate is number 19 on a list of 28 priorities in America. Mm-hmm. And the goal of our newly formed Reach Productions is to make climate disruption 1, 2, and 3rd priority on the list of topics for America and beyond. And so we're just getting this proposed. We've sent in 2 proposals and we're waiting to hear on both. But if that works, we hope to be able to reach out to Middle America, and they may not be interested in climate, but climate is interested in them, in their lives.
How would you go about doing that? Making something more salient?
It's about short, accessible messages on the truth about what the climate is going to do to their lives, their property, their children's lives, and their family's future. Because the sooner that we can really spell it out clearly and address the disinformation campaign that's happening across the country, where fear, uncertainty, and doubt is being sown, and the sooner we can actually, I think, push back on the misinformation that's taken place about climate historically. And, this sooner or later, these families are going to know about what the climate is doing to them. The opportunity is to accelerate that knowledge so that action can be taken now, climate action, to make this a top priority.
But honestly, that's real hard to do, because how are you going to force the press to cover things they don't want to cover? That's what I don't understand. Even I have a few friends who are, journalists and important journalists, and they don't.
Here's a great example. A great example is MoveOn.org that got President Obama elected. It was done as a grassroots support, and it was done with small donations by millions of volunteers. And MoveOn.org worked politically. We need a MoveOn.org for climate. And we're working with some of the best and most experienced progressive public relations campaign people across the American continent. And this presents an opportunity to raise the support and awareness to get climate action as first, second, and third priority in America and beyond.
Well, I don't want to sound skeptical, but I'm still back where I just said, that you've got to get journalists and the press to spend a lot more of their attention on that than what they're covering. And that is really hard to do. And I don't even know how to do it, because my own friends who are journalists are no better than anybody else on that.
Well, it's true. And Moji points out that MoveOn may have become more corporate over the years. But back in 2008, they did it with a swell of grassroots support. And I don't think it was corporate back in 2008 when they elected Obama. So it's that kind of action that's needed. I think it's been demonstrated to work. And some of the people that helped get MoveOn.org started have been advising us on how we can actually use the same playbook to go in the field and actually raise the priority for climate action within our country. And I think that's what it's going to take.
Okay. Tell me about that playbook. What do they do? No, seriously, the MoveOn playbook that you want us to copy. What is it that they do and that we should all be doing right now?
Okay, it's written by David Fenton, and it's called The Activist Playbook.
And
it's the Activist Media Handbook, lessons from 50 years as a progressive agitator. It's called the Activist Media Handbook, and here's a picture of it.
Oh, okay.
So that's the book. It's the Bible. Go for it. We're talking to David.
So what are some of the tips? Well, I mean, I can't go out on the street. What can I do sitting here at my computer?
I'll tell you. I'm going to quote David when he says, "What happens on your phones determines what happens in the world in this decade." There's there's 10 billion phones being made every year. That's more than the number of people. Something on that order, billions of phones. And so the point is, it's got to go to social media and it's got to be online. And that's why you don't have to leave the comfort of your home. You just need to get really active on social media with simple messages that can respond to the disinformation that's going out there. I'm talking about targeted messaging and actually having a messaging campaign that is got compelling, entertaining, and educational and enlightening short videos. We're talking about those little 30-second video clips.
How am
that
I going to
go
get
viral.
seriously, let's look at this technically. How am I going to get them to read those things? Because what I do, I have 3 different accounts on Facebook, and I belong to about 50 social groups on each of these 3 accounts. Well, vary a lot. And according to whether or not we're talking about radiation or famine or, now I post to those things, but I don't know how much good that's doing. And I would love to know how to invest my time best. What is supposed to pay off?
It's 2 words: viral videos.
Wanting to go viral is the name of the game for anybody. But
Sure.
that is the whole point. Not everybody can do that. That's a rare and wonderful thing. If it happens, you can't be counting on that, right?
I'm just very concerned that we're not getting close enough to the individual level, dealing with the individuals who are traumatized and who are traumatizing. And I think we have to spend much more time on that.
Okay, next time come back with some of these deserters and let's talk about them.
I don't know if they want to expose themselves.
Yeah, Brian?
Meta, one answer to your question is to identify the key topics that are in town halls like this one and select one of those topics and make a short 30-second video that depicts visually, graphically what's happening and suggest an approach, a solution. So it's less about this video per se, but you just have a link to these town halls. And so you get the people's attention through some interesting video.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom, you have a link to your town halls for people that want more information. And 2% will click through. And that's how you get more people listening to town halls.
I'll work on it. All right. Bless you guys. See you in a week or in a month, and take care. Okay?
Hi, all.
Bye.